I am unashamed. What about you?
All right, welcome back to Unashamed.
Hey, got the cheering crowd here.
Our new toy that Jase is in love with, thanks to 11-year-old. What's his name?
Caleb.
Caleb.
Not to be confused with K-Love.
K-Love, which we are an award-winning podcast, I might add.
We are.
Gee whiz. You're just...
And we have the trophy to prove it.
I always used to do that as a kid. I did two things that were very annoying.
It's just two things you remember, Jase. I remember a much longer list.
So we're ripping off the Band-Aid. I'm going into deep, dark, annoying things Jase did as a child. Do you remember what they are?
No.
One is every time...
You had a bumper sticker that said, "I'm surrounded by idiots."
I did do that.
In your
got in trouble for that.
Yep.
You know, you don't think this podcast is influential? When I was driving through that ice...
Yep.
I thought, I need that bumper sticker. And then as I found myself sliding down Cypress Street, I thought...
Heading into a car.
It takes one to know one, you idiot. I was going too fast to try to make the turn. So the two annoying things, one is every time something spectacular would happen, I would go, and the crowd goes wild. I just did that all the time.
I don't remember that.
The second thing is I would torque. I
remember the torque. You were always...
Torque?
He was
I would like flex
torque?
my muscles.
It was his version of twerking. It was torquing. Jay's torquing.
I looked like I had...
It looked like a bird who you'd pick the feathers off a blackbird.
I called it the stork torque.
When would you do this? Just
I would just come in to greet my family because our family wasn't like most people. They didn't realize you came home or you left.
That's true.
No one acknowledged anyone at any time. So I would just walk in and I would go, and everybody would laugh and I would walk out.
Our family is one of those things where you come in and you say, I've been lost for hours, and they were like, "Oh, we never knew you left."
I know. I ran away a dozen times. No one ever knew.
No one ever looked.
No.
That was the sad thing.
The last time I ran away, I thought, why do I just keep walking off a mile? Because it's a mile back. They're never going to know. So I could
have just gone around the corner.
I got a ladder, and I climbed on top of the house. And then all of a sudden...
I do remember you climbing on the house.
I smelled chicken frying. And
Mom had the ultimate lure to get us back.
Then I thought, I think she's burning the gravy. Oh, no. And the next thing I know, I walked in. I was like, Mom, you're burning the gravy.
So, and Willie, he liked to go and build places for himself, new domiciles, and he would spend the night there. Cook shack, the shed out back, made him a little fort up the hill.
Yep, he's always had rebellion tendencies.
Well, he's always liked to have different places, and now, of course, he's successful. So now they're just houses all over the parish. Yeah. So
everybody always asks me, they're like, "What's Willie doing?" I'm like, "Haven't seen him since the last time he yelled at me for catching his fish out of his pond." He's like, "I paid good money for those fish."
Sometimes I'll just walk into Anna's house and he'll be sitting there. Then we'll get to catch up and visit. But Zach talks to him more than anybody. Speaking of Anna, Jace,
we have a table centerpiece.
If you're watching, you can see it. If you're listening, there's a treat, a delectable treat in the middle of the table.
This would be a Mardi Gras king cake. Of course, we all know who the King of Kings truly is, and we're going to talk about him. His name is Jesus. But I will say this.
It's Jesus.
My lovely niece, Al's daughter, stood in line to get this cake for me.
She got you one too, Dad.
Without asking.
I already dropped it at your house.
The cream cheese variety is our favorite.
Yep.
And it has the little Mardi Gras colors.
Where'd you get it from?
There's a bakery in town.
Now look, I have no affiliation with these people. I pay full price, but let me tell you something. The fact that there's a line.
There's always a line waiting on the cakes, and they usually run out.
It's called Castor and Chicory, and I'm going to tell you, I've eaten, because we live in Louisiana, so what you do 3 times a year is you eat king cakes. They only do them for short periods of time. Mardi Gras, Christmas, and Easter.
I think. Yeah.
Do you
And-
drink the chicory as well with it? You get your little cup of.
And
No.
that's like really strong, almost bitter coffee is chicory. But
Well, I drink chicory every morning. I'd rather make it myself.
yeah,
I had some guests that stayed the night with me, and so I said,
might
"Look,
that guest be on the podcast later?
we may have a surprise guest." Al, he couldn't
I'm
help.
just teasing. I'm just teasing.
He'll be here shortly. He's taking all this in, seeing where he's going to fit in. But he has been here before.
Yeah,
And he was actually
he's only half the man he normally is, though. Today.
yeah, he doesn't have his twin, a brother from another mother, but you'll enjoy. So with that, and I actually took him duck hunting.
I know. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah,
so, Dad, are you fired up about the king cake too?
Fired up about it, but it reminds me, when we start talking about our past, this and that and the other. I've said this before. I read it
I bet you got a verse for us.
because it was
It reminds you.
profound. In the little book of Titus, the Apostle Paul is writing a young buck. It reeks of him being a young buck, Titus.
Yep.
Love what is good, Titus. Something upright, holy, self-controlled, disciplined. Then you give him he keeps going. Teach the older men to be temperate, worthy of respect, self-control, and sound in faith and love and endurance. Likewise, the older women to be reverent in the way they live. Well, not be slanderers or addicted to much wine. You can drink it, but
Not too much.
Don't get out of it. But to teach what is good, the young men and everything, set them an example by doing what is good. So when you look into these deep spiritual texts, what they say is, Titus, a people who are his very own is what God's looking for, eager to do what is good. Then again, chapter 3, not the 3 chapters, and he says to be obedient to the authorities. That can get you into trouble. To be obedient, to be ready to do whatever is good.
We didn't shoot over the limit today.
That's
You
right.
did good.
Devote themselves, the next group, chapter 3, to doing what is good, things that are excellent and profitable for everyone. And last, he says, Titus, our people must learn to devote themselves to doing what is good, in order that they may provide for daily necessities and not live unproductive lives. But it is pretty interesting because you see Titus is a younger man, and the Apostle Paul is much more versed in the Bible. But he's saying, look, all you have to do, Titus, and it is pretty interesting, just do what's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing, but most people don't talk about when Paul talked to Titus.
Yeah.
Well, it's
They
because
think, well, I need to find something I can do good. It needs to be kind of like a habit. You got a habit of doing good instead of a habit of doing evil, because the habit will form.
Yeah.
well,
no
because I
doubt.
think most people when they talk, we're at Jesus' death. We're right up to it. He's fixed to go before Pilate and Herod
Yep.
in Luke 22, and most people just focus in on the fact that he's making us good because of his sacrifice, which is true.
True.
But he's also calling us to do good things in this world.
That's right.
Yeah.
He makes us new creations. There's a job to do, and I think that should be equally stressed by his death on a cross. He's returning people, human beings, to reflect his image. That goes back to Genesis 2. When we were talking about so the scriptures will be fulfilled, it goes all the way back to the garden and the fall and everything that led up to this point.
Well, and look, he was on the earth 33 years doing good.
Yeah.
He never sinned, so he was only doing good. Right. And yet you saw how they treated him, so you can't do good, to your point, Dad, expecting good in return. You got to do good because it's the right thing to do.
That's right.
People may not even appreciate the good you're doing. They didn't appreciate him.
Yeah.
So, but he still did it.
So people can tell me anything about what kind of program they got going on. Just do what is good.
Yep, I like it. That's a good kickoff. All right, well, we're going to take a break. On the other side of the break, we're going to bring in our mystery guest. Does that sound good to you, Dad?
Guess the guest.
Guess the guest. All right, we'll see you on the other side.
We spend a lot of time talking about the pitfalls of mobile devices, but this morning on my way to the duck blind, I stopped my ATV, reached into my pocket, and picked up my mobile device, Phil, and called Jay, who was behind me, and said, I left my coffee in the lair. Would you bring it? He said, sure. So I hollered at Phil, who was in the rig right next to me. I said, mobile devices, they do come in handy every once in a while.
So, Dad, sometimes you at least have to admit, for a good cup of coffee and a duck blind, it's worth having a cell phone.
That's pretty good cause.
For the point of this segment, though, if you are going to use a mobile, why not use a provider who represents the things that we hold true?
Exactly. And so that's our good friends at Patriot Mobile, Jase. They are the only Christian conservative wireless provider. They offer dependable nationwide coverage. They give you access to all three major networks, which means you get the same coverage that you've been accustomed to, but you don't have to fund causes that you don't believe in. So when you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're sending the message you support free speech, religious liberty, the sanctity of life, Second Amendment, and of course, they're big supporters of military veterans and first responders, and so are we. They have a 100% U.S.-based customer service team that's going to make your switching easy. You can keep your number, keep your phone, or you can upgrade. Their team will help you find the best plan for your needs. All you got to do is go to patriotmobile.com/Phil or call them at 972-PATRIOT. You're going to get free activation when you use the code PHIL. So join us to making the switch today, patriotmobile.com/Phil. That's patriotmobile.com/Phil, or call them at 972-PATRIOT, and you'll get that hot cup of coffee that you left at the lair.
Welcome back. The reveal.
The big reveal.
Big reveal.
I call him Shane E.
It's Shane minus Shane.
That would
today.
be, you know what's funny about that? When my wife, before we got engaged, she had went abroad for a few years and she came back. She called me and I started talking to about myself like, yeah, Shane E.
Oh,
And she thought I was saying Shaney. And I said, no. I don't mean
that's your pet
Shaney.
name?
Not
Just-
Shaney.
Just call me
Shane
Shaney.
E.
Shane.
And the other Shane,
Yeah.
the artist currently known as Shane
Barnard.
B.
Yeah.
B and E.
B&E.
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 So
He's in the studio working.
They met doing a stretch of 5 to 10 for B&E.
B&E.
what's funny is
That's funny.
use
This
that. Use that.
I'm using it.
Use that.
Shane, like reinvent yourselves. Shane
That's
and
it.
Shane, B and E.
We
You need to rebrand.
we're gonna rebrand because we were prisoners and we were set free.
Now we're talking.
That's it.
see what I'm
I
saying?
can tell that story.
Zach, can you help them? Because you're the king of rebranding.
I can help these guys.
You've rebranded more brands.
So
I
y'all,
can take you guys to new levels.
New.
You call me when this is over. You call me.
I'll call you.
You call me.
You're a man who gets things done.
Shane and
Yes.
Shane, their recent success, Unashamed Nation, I'm giving them credit for it. Because y'all were two of the people that did the impossible. Y'all came on our podcast. How long ago was that?
About a year.
It was
We
last
should know which number podcast that was, so
bet
somebody
Maddie
can go back
knows.
and
I
see
bet
that. Maddie
Staff.
might know.
Y'all actually sang live.
Yeah.
Did.
And it was your new song at the time.
Yep.
The Battle, let's see. Battle's
fighting
already
a
won.
battle.
You've
Already
already
won.
won is the
You've
name of the
already
song.
won.
You've already won.
It's one of my favorite songs in the
It's
world.
so good.
Oh,
Who
thank
wrote
you, man.
that song?
Not me.
Really?
The guy who's at the studio working right now. But
Amazing.
somebody's got to kill the ducks.
Yeah. So Shane and Shane went duck hunting, and I noticed something in the first 60 seconds when y'all were here before. Shane E, who's with us, he's a duck hunter.
Yeah.
Shane B, he likes to talk.
He does like to talk.
He just sat there, and we really hammered the ducks. And I'm not even sure he participated.
He didn't even
He
shoot.
just sat there and talked and loved it.
Yeah.
Boy, this is awesome.
He loved it.
Yeah. So,
Which is one of the best things about duck hunting is it's communal. Deer hunting is typically
Yeah,
by
it's solo.
yourself, solo,
Yeah, it's
quiet.
solo.
But
Well-
duck hunting is communal. So even if you don't kill anything, you still have a pretty good time.
well, I didn't
Jay
realize.
Stone doesn't want you to talk. He wants you to be still
Yeah.
and not talk.
Ah,
He'll
there-
get frustrated at
There
you.
it is.
Episode
615.
615.
And we're on
6:15.
8:26 today.
You guys have been busy.
Wow.
So what we
We've
should
done
do,
we've done a lot of podcasts.
what we should do, Maddie, at some point is play that, because what I said they did the impossible is they sang live and it was awesome.
It was so good.
I mean, it was fantastic.
We were in the duck call room, as I recall,
Yeah.
last time.
I may or may not have been humming a bass harmony on that, just so you know.
Well, Daddy sang bass.
Daddy
You know,
sang bass on that
Daddy
song.
sang bass
I
on that
did.
song.
Zach, you
We
hadn't
brought
hummed
a
a
little-
bass note your
Daddy
life.
Zach.
We brought a little something to the table.
So today, Shane E brought 2 guests. I invited him, and he showed up with a party.
Yeah.
We made it work.
Well,
So-
that's classic.
So after the infamous ear ringing that we had about a week ago, Phil said, I'm going to go down the way with my friends. And so we actually hunted one hole, and Phil and Burley and who else did y'all have?
Donnie Sanders.
Donnie. They were in one blind.
So y'all did a split hunt.
Yeah, but we can see each other. I
Yeah,
mean, we're
that's-
only, 100 yards away?
100 yards.
Just far enough to where a pellet will hit you but not hurt you. And so one time, because the ducks wouldn't work today, I mean, we shot them. I think we were right at 20.
Mm-hmm.
And but one time they had 3 or 4 wood ducks come in on them because we had 2 relatively new hunters with you.
Yep.
And one of the guys, Nathan, I think that was the first time he ever duck hunted.
That's the first duck. He shot his first duck today.
Yeah. And so, because I sent Shane a text because he said, I'm coming in, and he brought up his buddies, and I said, are they experienced hunters? Because we had just had a newbie ring everybody's ears. So everybody was like, no more guests.
No more guests.
That's it. They're out. And so I said, is this person, are they experienced hunters? And he sent me a text. It went, they've hunted before. I said, okay, we're splitting up, gang. That's exactly what happened.
I know.
But Phil and them had a group of woodies come in, and they were pop, 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 and none of them were falling. And they were like, well, we're feeling better. But I was trying to explain to them that in that blind, when the ducks get, there's a hedgerow of button willows in front of the blind, and it's kind of unique.
When
The
they get
only
below
place
there?
that you can't shoot them
That's when they're right in the water.
when they get right on the water in front of the
They,
decoy.
this morning, they
You know what
lived-
you call
lived
that?
behind
Poor
that.
planning.
They behind the thicket.
Yeah.
Every time. Boom, 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 boom. Limbs flying, ducks flying. Too.
Usually after 2 or 3 hunts, you'll have some holes through there that
Oh,
you
yeah.
can now shoot ducks through.
But it was fun. I mean, we had a good time. It was cloudy and calm, and all of a sudden we went from ice to 60 degrees. We were sweating like mules.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun.
It was
Hey,
good. Did you
we were in
enjoy
the
it?
duck
Shane?
hunt. We were in the duck line. That was fun.
Yeah.
And it's good to see guys who know how to use a duck call.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
They sound like
That's
ducks.
So you'll know.
they sound like ducks.
So you know, when duck hunting gets slow, I'll give you an example. 2 guys were with us. I'd never met them before, but I've started preaching the gospel to them while we were waiting for ducks. But the ducks didn't show, but the sermon did. So I said, strip naked like you came from your mother. And I said, I'll take you out there in the decoys, and I'll baptize you boys, and you'll be good to go. And they looked at each other and they said, it's just about 32 degrees. I said, sometimes, boys, you just got to suck it up. So they stripped naked. We walked out, and then the edge of the decoys, I moved them out of the way.
You talking about counting the cost.
I didn't want them to get tangled up in the decoy. And
It's not as weird as it
baptized them
sounds, y'all.
both. And look, those 2 guys called me over and over and over. I need to tell them right now, I love y'all if you're hearing this. Because you came there, you were dedicated to say, I
Their
need to be
rebirth
born
was
again.
like their
That's
firstborn
born again.
Phil,
Shane,
do
have
you-
you been baptized?
I have, but not in a 32
We
degree.
may need to. Y'all may need to
turn
check
into
his
a
conversion
spiritual
before he
thing.
leaves.
Phil, do you realize that they've never been more attentive in their life as to when you said, what y'all need to do is stripped naked, weighed out in the decoys. Right there at that moment, they were thinking, and do what?
Yeah, my first question would have been, could I at least wear my underwear? Like I would have, I mean,
Do you also realize they've never been back?
You got to remember when the Apostle Paul and all of them are preaching the gospel, and Peter and they're getting the people together. You got to remember, you say they didn't have heated.
They didn't.
No, if you were in the wintertime, it's going to be in cold water when you obey with that. So yeah, I ever since then I said, well, now they have heated baptisms and people are soft.
Yeah. Well, some volunteered. There was some the other day. The one Jase was the special forces guy. Jase, he said, "I'll go to the river." And Jase said, "Well, really, there's no point in us wading out in that cold water, when we don't have to."
I had to talk him off the ledge.
did y'all do it in the cold water?
No, we did it at the.
Well, we
No,
did. We had
I
a couple that wanted. It was cold. It was like
Usually
22
when I
degrees.
tell them at this time of year in the winter like this, the cottonmouths are not. They're denned up, and so
Gators are
hibernating.
Gators are hibernating. I said, so you get past those two until the spring and summer, then you'll have to deal with that. If you
No.
walk out in this river.
Yeah.
Well, no, when Ty from the military, when he was trying to talk me into being baptized when it was 30 degrees, he's like, I just really would feel better if I was baptized in nature. I taught him as a new Christian that he was fixed to be, that how to take a verse out of context. So I said, for Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel. I said, now I can line somebody up for you, but I'm not wading out in that water. 30 degrees.
And you know what? It's all God's nature. Let's take another break.
Well, I threw the phone up because, we left them hunting, and they said the mallards are pouring in to where we just left.
I was betting on it.
And then he sent another text and said 75 teal just gave him the decoys. So
Ooh.
Are they hunting now?
we left too early. I'm assuming they are, but they're not going to be hunting long if that's happening unless they got their eyes
If you
closed.
said they came in the decoys, though, if they came in with them button willows in between them and the teal, nothing's going to happen except a bunch of missing.
Well, we'll see. We'll get the story later, but I just thought I'd tell you that. You know what we call that, Shane? Those are the devil's ducks.
Those are
He
the
sent them in.
We're doing the Lord's work.
We're
right
doing
here.
the Lord's work, and he sent them in and said, they're leaving, stop, do something. But
I got a feeling Shane right now is thinking, I think I'd rather be with the devil's ducks.
Shane said, when's this thing wrap?
Look at him over there. I can see it on his face, man. Where would you rather be?
I'm
In a
right
Bible
where
study?
I'm supposed to be.
So
That makes sense.
Zach, tell us what
Hey, dude.
your connection to Shane and Shane. Y'all have done stuff together. Tell us what your view of the Shane Square is.
Shane, I sent my kids to be missionaries at Shane's house for the summer, and that he put my kids up. I thought they were ministering to him. It turns out he was ministering to them. So how long did my kids live at your place?
Almost. They were there almost 7 weeks.
How were they? Be honest.
Oh, they're incredible. I don't know
you-
how they came. I don't know how
incredibly
they
bad.
came from you. But you
did say
raised
you
them right.
walked in on you did say you walked in on a spaghetti. What was what did you tell? You called me
Oh
the
man,
first
well,
week.
it wasn't their fault really because I have this little apartment over my garage, and Zach and Layla were staying there. I mean, Max and Layla were staying there, and they had been there like maybe 2 days, and I walk up there and it just smells like meat. The whole place just smells like meat. And I walk over to the sink, and I mean, it's like they made spaghetti in the sink.
Oh.
I mean, it was red and meat sauce all the way up, kind of like it was just nasty. And there was pots just, it looked like it'd been there like 3 days, I'm like, I think I texted you. I'm like, I don't know what's going on up here.
I don't know where they would have
I
gotten
don't know.
that from.
I mean, I was just like, this is this is a disaster. Well, come to find out, my garbage disposal had frozen up.
Oh.
And so they had made meat and they were trying to wash it down and it just clogged the sink up. But they didn't tell me that.
Yeah, you're making me really hate the fact that I missed that meal. Don't got filled up. Oh.
Well, you don't put meat down a garbage disposal.
Well, they did. They
just
just put it down, but it didn't go down. But then they came home and they didn't know I was fixing it. So I went and got a new garbage disposal and I was under the sink.
Yeah.
And they got there and they were just mortified. They're like, thought they broke it. And I mean, it was a mess.
Yeah.
And, and so they were like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. I'm like, it's fine. It's not your fault. We're going to get it fixed, So we got it fixed. And, oh, they're so sweet.
They did an album with you guys.
They did, yeah.
Y'all
So-
have a program, which is really cool.
Yeah, we had some we run an online training resource called the Worship Initiative. It's worshipinitiative.com, and this last year was our first year to do a residency. So we brought in a bunch of younger people and a couple of older, and we just worked through the Psalms. And so we just spent 6 weeks going through the Psalms one at a time. And it's just like our kind of life verse is let the word of Christ dwell richly in you, teach and admonish one another in all wisdom through singing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs with gratefulness to God in your heart.
Love it.
And so that's why for two guys that sing, that's the verse we like to cling to,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's in Ephesians 5 too, but it says something similar, but we love the thought of singing God's word, and we love it. We've been doing that for years, and we love to walk people through his word and say, man, if you're going to say anything, if you're going to put any words in somebody's mouth that they're going to sing, man, we want it to be God's word, not my ideas,
Amen.
but God's word. And so that's what we do, because we believe that it really changes your heart. It really, it's feeding the heart, not feeding the flesh.
Yeah.
When you're feasting on the word of God instead of the world.
Which is interesting, because the first week or two they were there, they were like, okay, you're not writing one song, one lyric, and they just studied the Psalms, and spent time in prayer, Bible study, and just conversations about it, which I thought was awesome for them too, just to see the intentionality of when you're going to write songs for the church. We need to be intentional about the theology of it and what we're saying. So it was a great experience. You guys are going to do it, I guess, every year now, right?
Yep, we're doing it again this year, and so it's we're really excited about it. And it was the record's called Psalms from the Well, which you should check it out. So Max and Layla have a couple of songs on there that are so good. They are so good. Have you guys heard them?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they are so good.
Oh yeah, they can sing.
So talented.
Yeah.
Where'd they get that from, Zach?
They got most of that from me, and
the same place they got their bad parenting from.
Well,
where they just walk off and leave a sink full of food. I guess.
Here's the thing about my voice. I can actually sing very good, and Shane B will testify to that, because Shane E, that's true. You've heard me. You've heard what I can do.
But you did say Max and Layla were on the album, not Zach. Is that correct?
His voice is as equally as strong as his humility. Yeah, does that make sense?
That's what I was thinking.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
You did give me a chance to say I don't have the timing. I can't keep the rhythms. You know what I mean?
Well, that makes sense.
I've asked to be on the worship team at multiple churches that we've been a part of, and everyone says no, because you cannot keep the time.
Is that why you started your own church?
Yeah,
that's it, right there.
That's it.
And they won't let me sing.
Well, that's such a shocker,
all
because
preachers want to sing.
you would think a guy who's notoriously late would have better timing.
Because he seems to consistently be late.
Right there. That hurts. Wow.
So I thought about you. We're in Luke 22, but I did think in between Matthew 26 and Matthew's version, right before Jesus predicts Peter's denial, when they did the Passover supper, and Jesus was basically representing himself as the new lamb. for everyone. I've always this as a husband to a woman who loves worship. I've always thought about that verse in Matthew 26:30, right after he just said, when he took the cup, this is 26:27, he gave thanks and offered it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom." Then it says, when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And I'm sure in that moment they probably didn't think a whole lot about that. But I've often thought about whatever song they sang together, and I'm assuming they just started singing. And as this process went on, Jesus predicts
that's the last
denial.
peaceful moment they had.
Yeah.
Really until he left, and then he wasn't there long. So, that was really sort of the wrap of all their time together. Because after this happens, it's rolling down fast.
Judas betrays him.
Betrayal.
Peter denies him, and he's sitting there staring at the fire. But then you fast forward what we did last podcast in John 21, when here is Jesus reinstating Peter around the fire after this miraculous catch, where it was kind of the same as Luke 5, but instead of Peter saying, "Go away from me, I'm a sinful man," this time he jumps out of the boat and swims, because it's Jesus on the bank, has a fire, they eat fish together, and here's their resurrected Lord. They're eating fish with a man who was dead.
Yeah.
And I'm positive that during that reinstatement, at some point, they had to think back to that song they sang and what had just happened. They had all abandoned him. And it moves me to know that in the middle of that was worship. Maybe in the moment they took it for granted, but I guarantee you they went back and thought about that. Or the next time they sang that song, I'm sure tears were streaming down their face, because a lot had happened in between.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Well, I think maybe that wasn't that after it's because in the Psalms of Ascents they would do what at the Last Supper or the Passover meal, they'd do a hymn at the end. And was that one Psalm 118? Is that what that was?
I think.
Do y'all know about that?
I'm not sure.
I think
like when they did that the Passover, they would sing a psalm.
Yeah.
And I think it was like Psalm 118 or something.
Right.
I might be remembering that part of it.
Yeah.
But it's just like that psalm says, the gate that the righteous shall enter through.
Yeah.
He was the gate whether they sang that or not. It's just like, I think to your point, Jace, it's like they realized.
Yeah.
They got it.
Right.
They got it.
Psalm 118 also says his love endures forever
a
lot of times.
Well, you know what else it says here? This is interesting because we've been making the case in this podcast that a big part of what Jesus is doing here was the coming of the kingdom, the establishment of the new temple. We talked a whole lot about Jesus being the cornerstone. That's also in Psalm 118, 22. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone.
That's right.
Right after the part that you mentioned about the gate.
Yep.
So, I think that would be interesting to find out if they did sing that at the Passover. That would make a lot of sense to what we've been talking about.
Well, we talked about how that was really the last Passover ever needed. They still practiced it after. They still do today.
Yep.
But in reality, do we ever need another Passover after that night? So that song really was the wrap of the last Passover ever needed, because the Lamb of God now is sacrificed.
And that scripture is so strong, man. It's so rich. It's crazy that was written so many years before.
Yeah. Which is like you said, and it still speaks to us. I was thinking about that because we're going to do Psalms next after we finish Luke. In Psalm 1, just the first 3 verses are so strong. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers.
Scoffers, yeah.
But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. And then I love this one. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers.
It's amazing.
Which is powerful. Yeah, the halal. Psalm 113 to 118 was what they would say.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
You hang out in the songs.
Maddie backed him up. Good job, Maddie. But anyway, it's just so powerful, the idea that that's still, we talked about being the hymnal, for the Israelites.
Yep.
And yet even to this day, it still blesses us and enriches us. And even in that moment, it was like that. Plus, I don't know what they did here, but at the end of Luke, in Luke 24, he led them to the vicinity of Bethany. He lifted up his hands and blessed them. While he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up into heaven, which is the Acts 1. Then they worshiped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy. And they stayed, continuing at the temple, praising God. So even in that last moment, they were worshiping, as he left them, because now, of course, their joy is complete. We're on our way.
Yeah, man.
To take off and do it. So.
I mean, dude, their Lord had died. I mean, it's like, dude.
Well, they get a lot
It's
of
real.
They get a lot of grief for all abandoning him, but it's nothing that we wouldn't do.
Oh,
I mean, you're like, boy, this is a great plan, and then all of a sudden, usually when the leader dies, the movement dies. But in this case, it flourished. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because he came out of the grave. That's why.
Exactly.
We call that the game changer.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's what separates Jesus and his movement, his kingdom on earth, rather than any other.
Yeah.
When the leader dies, that's over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like this wasn't happening a lot in those days. And the reason they used a cross was to it was more than just, we're killing you.
Yeah.
We're disgracing you. Don't ever challenge us. They would leave them on a cross and let people see. They were making a statement. This is what happens when you question our power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you try to take away our authority. You remember that was the big question all the way through. Whose authority? Who do you think you are to come in here and turn upside down what we've established?
Yeah.
And what was amazing about it is all the prophecy, everything that they had studied, everything they had written, read, all pointed to him being who he was and coming here.
Absolutely.
And yet when it happened, they said, no go. Who does this guy think he is? I mean, it started with them, and then it spreads all the way out. And even to the Romans, it was just a nuisance more than anything else.
Absolutely.
And an uprising.
Yeah, and you see that where we're at. If I read the text in Luke 22:66.
This is when it hit to me. I call it this is when the politics now kicks in.
You can get the world to count time by Jesus Christ. You've crossed a hurdle.
Yeah.
It's 2,024 years since Jesus showed up.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think the Chinese, they say, yeah, that's what day it is. And the Russians and everybody else worldwide, they can all count time by Jesus. And they're like, well, what's this? Why would you follow him? And they count time by him and have no explanation why.
Right.
A lot of them, they don't even think he exists.
Yep.
Worldwide.
Yeah. So in Luke 22:66, and we had just started this. I think we did it in the overtime, Al, in 63 through 65. They start making fun of Jesus because here he is supposedly doing miracles and claiming to be God. So the men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, prophesy, who hit you? And they said many other insulting things to him.
We talked about that just being human nature. Now all of a sudden, I mean, these same guards had been sent to pick him up a few times and were amazed by what he was doing.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, we got him in secret, so we're going to start being abusive. It's just, you see evil now.
Yeah.
It's like he had done nothing to them.
Yeah.
But you see their reaction.
Yeah. So they have him tied up, they're beating him, and now they start antagonizing him and asking him all sorts of questions. In verse 66, at daybreak, the council of the elders of the people, both the chief priests and teachers of the law, met together, and Jesus was led before them. If you are the Christ, they said, tell us. Jesus answered, if I tell you, you will not believe me, and if I ask you, you wouldn't answer.
Mm-hmm.
But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God.
There's your Daniel 7, Zach.
Yeah.
Son of Man.
So he's already, Jesus in his wisdom has realized it's over. This is just a matter of time.
That's right.
You're getting a thrill out of this, kicking me while I'm down. But I'm going to be seated at the right hand of God, which I'm sure that did not go well, because then they said, well, are you then the Son of God?
Mm-hmm.
He replied, you're right in saying I am. Then they said, well, why do we need any more testimony? We've heard it from his own lips.
Blasphemer.
Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, we have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar.
That's a lie.
And claims to be Christ or the Messiah, a king. So Pilate asked Jesus, are you the king of the Jews? Yes, it is as you say, Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, I find no basis for a charge against this man.
Yep.
In other words, he's like, who cares who the king of the Jews? I mean, like, I don't care.
So they insisted he stirs up the people all over Judea. I mean, he's a troublemaker by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here. On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean.
And you can see a light bulb going off right here because, oh, wait, this might be somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
That's what he's thinking.
When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform some miracle. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him, dressing him in an elegant robe. They sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends. Before this, they had been enemies. So you see, everybody from every conceivable angle has made a mockery out of what Jesus was trying to accomplish.
And you also notice that you see how evil begins to align. You know, I mean, up until this point, Pilate and Herod are enemies, you know, for whatever reason over petty control, I'm sure. And now all of a sudden they found a common element in opposing Jesus. What were you going to say, Zach?
So I want to read this Daniel 7 passage because I think it's just 2 verses, but I've been getting a lot of Instagram messages about, man, you guys are really hammering this kingdom here, kingdom now, kingdom come. I'm like, yeah, and I think that Jesus is hammering it too. And when you think about these Old Testament references, like the phrase "the Son of Man," which is out of Daniel 7, I'm going to read it right here because what you're going to see is that this is not just simply a declaration that Jesus is God. It is that, but it's also a declaration, as he said to Pilate, that Jesus is King, that God is becoming King. That is a monumental happening here. So when you read Daniel 7. He says, I saw that in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. There's the reference, a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given, the Son of Man, dominion and glory and a kingdom.
Yep.
And here's the description of the kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. This is that reference, also that picture you get in Isaiah 2 of all the nations coming up the mountain to worship God. And his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall not be destroyed. So this is not simply about forgiveness of sins, although it is that. It's also about the coming of the kingdom with the coming of the king, and the king just so happens, the king of Israel just so happens to be the God of the heavens who created everything. And the purpose is that it's a multi-ethnic kingdom that God is calling all the nations now into. He's grafting Gentiles and everybody else into this kingdom of his, which Jesus is king of. And I don't think we can overestimate that point.
It's kind of like the coronation, it's just like death shall bring life, it's just like the Passover Lamb. It's just like, in so many references, he had come to serve. Yeah. Exactly. And then now it's the beginning of the transition. And then, man, it's like, he's going to come back again.
Yeah, exactly.
and everybody's going to know he's the king.
Right.
You know, nobody's guessing anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
You know,
Philippians
and
2. Every knee will bow.
Every knee will
tongue
bow.
confess.
I mean, he is the king, but man, when he shows up on the scene next time, just like you say, the resurrection is looming.
That's right.
He's coming, and when he's coming, I hope I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
And what I find fascinating is that these people are the ones who should know, don't know.
Yeah.
So then he goes to Pilate, who sends him to Herod, who know even less than the others.
Oh yeah.
They don't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, Pilate's like, well, what is this to me? I mean, he just looks at it from a political perspective, and he's like, there's no way this guy deserves to die. There's, the stuff you're claiming, I don't even care about. And so I find it fascinating that the people that should have known were the ones clamoring the most to kill him.
Yeah.
Instead of follow him.
Yeah.
Instead of bow to him.
But it shows you how much people in power want to please people.
Yeah.
Because we're fixed to read as the remainder of the chapter. They kept saying
We don't want to kill this guy.
Yeah,
they didn't want to kill him.
He hadn't
done anything.
Right.
I mean, what? But they're like, crucify. So they're, come up with a system. We can release one. And
Yep.
So they
keep trying to find a political solution.
They do.
Oh, wait, we release a guy every
What about
time.
Barabbas?
Yeah, what about this guy? We know
we're not
he's
reading
bad.
that yet. You got to come back next week or tomorrow.
But what is interesting to Zach's point, when we get, and this will be a preview for what we get into next time, the soldiers in verse 36, they came up and they were mocking him again. They offered him wine vinegar and said, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. This idea of him being king keeps coming up. I mean, Pilate asked the same thing. And there was a written notice above him which read, this is the king of the Jews. But what was their message here? They're like, this is what happens when you claim to be king.
Yeah, this is what happened to kings when you don't bow to us.
That was my original point. The cross was used as a way to provoke fear in the public.
Yeah.
They thought they were stamping it out. They thought this is going to be the way to shut this whole king talk down and this kingdom talk. We're going to shut that down. But what they didn't understand was that this is kind of I don't even know what the word is. It's the ethos of the new kingdom. This sacrificial love is the ethos of the new kingdom. And what the thing they thought they were doing that would destroy the kingdom was the very thing that actually brought it into its fruition of what we experience today, which is what, where does it say if they would have known what happened to the King of Glory, they would have never crucified him? Where's that at?
1 Corinthians 2:7, but that's a guess.
It is 1 Corinthians 2. While you're looking that up, I thought about it. One of the other versions, as Pilate is debating this situation, one of the other tellings of it in the other Gospels says that his wife had a dream.
Yeah.
And sent word and said, don't have anything to do with killing this man. And I've always found that fascinating where that came from, that dream. Was that from evil? Out of fear, maybe something's brewing here? Was that from God? Who sent her that memo that then she told him? Because somebody told her that in a dream. I don't know who it was. And then she sends the warning because she's like, don't have anything to do with killing this man.
And maybe that's why that he was like, man, dude, kill Barabbas, man.
He did not want to do it.
It's a bad dude, man.
That's exactly right.
They're gonna choose Barabbas,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe. I was off. It's 1 Corinthians 2:8, but I'll read it to Zach's point because I think it's a good verse. In verse 6, it says, "We speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age, who are coming to nothing. We speak God's secret wisdom, a wisdom that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, as it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. But God has revealed it to us by his Spirit."
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I've always thought it was pretty fascinating.
powerful.
We're almost out of time. Shane, it's always a blast to have you on. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, where folks can find your stuff. And
Oh man,
kind of stuff,
yeah,
'cause-
we're you can go to shaneandshane.com, figure out where we are, but we spend most of our days at the Worship Initiative, just creating resources for worship leaders, musicians, songwriters, even people who have a desire to do that, to really equip the church with a hunger and a love and a thirst for God's word. And so that's really what we want to see: biblically literate
Yeah.
people who know how to do what they do well,
Yeah.
and dependent upon the Lord for that. And so that's what we do. That's how we spend our days. So you can go to theworshipinitiative.com. You can find us there. We're there every day.
I know everybody knows people that could benefit from it. And I was preaching Sunday, Shane, and I said the kingdom of God is about action. And part of that is paying forward what God has done in your life. And that's what you guys are doing. I mean, you're paying forward what he's blessed you guys with, an ability to do something. And you're paying it forward. And they'll be doing that. What you're creating now will be blessing lives long after you're waiting for the resurrection.
We'll put some of these links up in the show notes for you guys listening, and also a couple of these songs we talked about. You guys can go check out some of the work they're doing.
Maybe we can get the Shanes back when we're in Psalms and do something together.
We'd love that.
That'd be fun.
I would sing it, but that would ruin the applause. I'm fighting a battle that you've already won.
He's already won, man.
If you want to follow us over, blazetv.com/unashamed. Shane's always a blessing.
Thanks for having me.
Have another podcast. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.